Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. Thank you for coming to Patreon, for supporting us here, for sharing your ideas, for bending your mind around the concepts that have to do with prepping, the economy, world affairs, social crap, everything, right? Everything we're taking a look at now, I can't help but see through the lens of prepping and shit hitting the fan. We are so close. And I don't say that with happy relish, right? But I do say it because I see it's coming, and by golly, we need to be ready. Are you ready? All right, so here we are, Monday morning, right? The market is shaky as hell. Everything is going crazy. But I want to take a look back. It's some activities from last week, and we're going to see how they play out this week. So last week, the news broke that a reporter wanted to get married. He needed to go to an embassy, a consulate, a government building, because he needed to get a permit or some such jazz, right? And the names of the characters, to me, in some ways are important and in other ways are not. But we've got all sort of uncertainty in the world. And it as if we really needed one more thing to go up, right? Well, it's gone up. So this reporter goes into an embassy and he does not come out. Details are still sketchy, and that's kind of complimentary. But what we've heard is that this reporter, who works for, at some point and in some way, the American press, but he is a foreign national, he was captured. He was arrested, held, detained, questioned, tortured, and essentially murdered. We don't, and we can't, you and I, ever know the real facts. All we're ever going to get is the official story. But we're hearing some contradictory stories, which tells me that they're trying to figure out what to say and what to do about this. Right? This man was murdered. And of course, I last week spoke and said, who cares? This is one guy. It's one reporter. What is the big deal? He's not an American, right? He's a member of the press. Is a member of the press more important than a busload of children in Yemen? Is one man, a reporter, more important than the people who were killed at public events, at weddings, and in other places in Pakistan when Obama was president? And he drone struck them? Right? Why is this one guy so important? Why is this such a big fucking deal? My contention is that we are seeing some of the fallout of a black operation. Because that's what the evidence to me indicates. You see, we know that there's basically a war in Yemen. There's a Middle Eastern war over Yemen. We've had, as I just pointed out, dozens and hundreds and thousands of people killed and injured with drone strikes in an effort to get reputed supposed terrorists. But there's this back thing that goes on, this back story. There is political intrigue. There are corporate, shall we say, special interests. And we see hints of that in the movies, but there are real-life games, and I call them games loosely. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but these games are played where corporations have heavy financial interest in certain areas, and they work with and they work around government agencies. Mercenaries go in and do dirty deeds for business. right? So, and I know they've taken out a lot. I saw some weird shit when I was a Marine. So, we'll just stop there and then focus back on what's happening with this one guy. Why is he so important? Why is it that in the United States federal government, both Democrats and Republicans are highly incensed, highly interested in this one reporter being killed? Right? He didn't invent the cure for cancer. Right? He was just one guy. But apparently he pissed off, right, the crowned Saudi prince. I think bin Salman's his name. He's a character I'm going to mention by name because he is important to the story. Apparently he's pissed off royalty over there in Saudi Arabia. And so the princes, and this is being reported, the prince's men, right, were sent over, unbeknownst to the reporter, but they found their way into Turkey. And Turkey is another country right now. And their president, prime minister, admiral, general, whatever the hell he is, Erdogan, right? He's involved in this. He's up to his neck, right? This happened in his country. He's pissed off. Everyone's pissed off at him and have been lately. The Turks are mad at everyone over their currency being devalued, right? There's worries about gold. There's worries about oil in the region. There's worries about trade, whether they use the dollar or the yuan. There is a ton of intrigue that's developing in this section of the world, the Middle East or the Near East. And let's not forget that World War I didn't break out in New York City or London or Paris or Frankfurt. It broke out in Yugoslavia, or a country that became Yugoslavia, right down there in the Eastern Mediterranean. Right, we're very close to that zone again, having some things happen. So this reporter is killed, and it's drawing a lot of attention on the Crown Prince, and demands are being made that Trump do something about it. Right, and last week a lot of people were saying, "Holy crap, this could be the start of World War III, where Europe gets drawn into conflict in the Middle East." Right? Could this be the start of a World War III or a greater war? And again, it's over one man, one seemingly insignificant man. How is he more important than, right, hundreds and thousands of other children and women and men that are casualties of greater conflicts and powerful people? Unless this is part of a bigger game. And it is. It has to be. Something is needing to be done in Saudi Arabia. A decision is needing to be made. Changes must happen. And how do you get a leader of a country, whether they're a royal prince or whether they're a potentate or whether they're an elected official? Right? Something has to happen that gets them in trouble, right? That forces them to make change. It's kind of like extortion or blackmail, right? Let's just imagine you're the prime minister of a country and a prostitute is found dead in your country palace, right? Your country vacation home. And you've got to answer for it. Oh, that is, unless you do as you're told and we'll just sweep this under the rug. Well, the last few weeks we've had a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia. Last few months, last few years, there's always pressure over there. But was there a type of pressure we're not aware of? Of course. There's all kinds of pressure being put on everyone around the world that you and I aren't aware of. Right? We don't get to know all the details. Very few people are even players in the game, and they are in compartmentalized positions where they get a phone call. They're told to go down to the flight line, to get on a plane. They're given orders. This is what you're going to do, and that's all they know. They don't know the reasons why and what the repercussions are and who's going to do what. So, several men reputedly from Saudi Arabia get on a plane and they fly into Turkey. And they go to this consulate, and this reporter goes in, and he is tortured and killed. Some reports have come out that he was cut to ribbons, literally into pieces, while he was alive. And that is some serious torture. Right? I've had the crap beat out of me, but I've never had body parts cut off. You know, it's horrifying to think of this. But all of this pressure is going back onto the Crown Prince, bin Salman. Right? This is a very important area of the world. Right? The Saudi oil. They're running out of it, but at the same time, they are responsible for supplying a great deal of oil to the world. Who is putting this pressure on and why? Do they want him to increase production or decrease production? Now, what you and I think we need, what the stock market thinks we need, what the president, Mr. Trump, thinks we need, what Europe thinks it needs, has nothing to do with what this pressure is all about. You see, blackmail and extortion isn't done for the benefit of the world. It's not done for the benefit of citizens. It's not even done for the benefit of leaders. It's always done for the beneficiary of whoever is applying that pressure. Bin Salman gets to make a decision and take some action. And he's being pressured, right? What's the threat? What is the threat? Well, the United States may have to do something about this. Right? Will Europe do something about this? Remember, this is just one reporter. Who gives a fuck about him? Who is he compared to the thousands of people that have perished at the hands of corporations and countries? Right? It's an incredible amount of pressure. So for one guy to pressure the prince this much, what other things are going on? What is he being accused of? Right? What he's being accused of is, well, the Crown Prince is getting revenge. Right? In other words, he's murdered a man in another country. That's what he's being accused of. Right? He sent his henchmen, right? He's complicit in it. So apparently over the last few weeks, bin Salman hasn't done what he's been asked. He hasn't been done what he's told, right? It looks like this murder may have happened, right, in an effort to put pressure on him. And this is the black op I'm talking about. This is the dirty deed that's for hire. And he's being, what, framed for it? And I am speculating a lot. I have to admit right up front I'm speculating a lot. But if you look at who the players are, President Trump, Congress, the United States government heads, right? Heads of state are involved in this. So it's got to be a big fucking deal. Right? What is going on over there? Now, in the end, we can't do anything about it. We're just little people. In the end, right, there's nothing we can do. There's no way to benefit from it other than to be a prepper and say, oh my God, right? We are getting huge indicators that there is palace intrigue, that there is international pressure, and that it looks like blackmail, extortion, and the heavy hand of foreign governments are trying to embarrass and push and force, right, bin Salman to do something. Right? Is it to stop fighting in Yemen? Is it to increase his oil, decrease his oil? Right? Ultimately, whatever choice he makes, it's going to benefit somebody. Right? He doesn't want to be known as a murderer. He doesn't want to be blackmailed. Right? He's probably trying to get his ass out of trouble. And indicators are that he's revamping his administration and he's looking at his bureaucracy and his government operations. Well, really, what's that going to do, right? Once again, there's a play, there's a story, there's news that you and I get to watch. You and I get to see and hear. But behind the scenes, things that are completely different are happening right now. Right? Behind the scenes, the real reasons for this murder to have taken place, for the blame to be placed, right? It's all happening right now over in the Middle East. What is at stake in the Middle East? is stability in that region. The same way confidence in the United States dollar gives it value, whether it goes up or down. Over in the Middle East, stability keeps the oil price steady, consistent, not swinging too high or too low too fast. If we have war break out there, real war, right? Or at least war that the mainstream news wants us to know about, because there is war over there, there's terror over there. But it's not reported because they need that oil price to stay steady. Over the last week, it's been creeping down. At the same time in Iran, right, they've got sanctions coming, and Iran is threatening, you guys screw around, we're going to fuck with the oil supply. It's going to make the price skyrocket. U.S. oil corporations want the price up. Russian oil corporations want the price to go up. Right? The president, Mr. Trump, wants the price to stay low because oil is energy, and energy is the cost of everything. Transportation, food production, mining, military expense. Everything is tied to energy. So they need bin Salman to what? Help keep calm in the region. Right? They're threatening war. So who's doing this? Who has performed this dirty deed? You and I never get to know, unfortunately. Right? Who's going to benefit? That's a big question. The decision the Crown Prince makes, right, is going to affect this oil price, the stability in the region. Right? The U.S. government wants it to be the same, but the Democrats and Republicans are pushing for action over one guy, one man. Incredible stuff is going on. Right now, there is hair pulling. There is wailing and weeping and screaming and yelling in the secret halls that you and I don't ever get to see. You and I don't ever get to hear. And in fact, what I'm talking about right now, the decisions and where it's going probably happened 3-4 days ago. Because in truth, in reality, in my experience, when something crazy happens somewhere else, there's about a 1 to 2 day lapse before it makes it to mainstream news. You see, because the events that play out in these black ops, they have to be filtered and washed, a cover story created, sanitized, coalesced into a chain of events that can be fed to the media. Now, maybe they've gotten fast at it. Maybe it only takes a day. Maybe it only takes a few hours now. But back in the late 80s, they took some time. I saw some very unusual shit. Essentially, operations happened, and 2 days later, the news came out and talked about the exact same thing I knew about. Oddly enough, right? It's like, gee whiz. Interesting. I'm already home, and this is news, right? This was days ago. Anyways, it is my suspicion, and it's just that. And this is just information for you to consider. It's my opinion that we've had a serious international intrigue, black operation occur with the intent to extort or blackmail or in some way push, right, the Crown Prince, Erdogan, that entire region in a direction. And it may not be beneficial for us. Right? And this isn't just about a little bit of money. Right? This is about major activity. Once again, the reason I point to this is I go, one guy. Why all of this over one guy? Why is one man so important now? And we hear about this. One guy's released from prison. And he meets with the president. And that's a big deal. There's people being held captive by nations around the world. Nations are holding prisoners of other nations. And they're traded, they're released, they're talked about, they're ignored. They're just given up for dead. But when one is released and he becomes a major news story, you have to understand and realize there's a reason for that becoming news and newsworthy. Right? It affects government decisions. It affects the course of world events. And really, all that one person is an excuse. Right? It's just an excuse for this activity to take place. So whatever's happening in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, in the Persian Gulf area, right? It really is, it's just a, that is the big main thing. This story about this reporter being marched out in front of everybody is the cover story. It's the raison d'etre for all this other activity. They could have killed a number of people. They could have killed, and they have killed hundreds and thousands of people. But that isn't used to create this firestorm. Essentially, they got a steam in a teacup, a storm in a teacup. Right? And they brewed this up over one guy. But that really isn't what this is all about. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up in the context of a prepper channel is it illustrates how quickly things can go bad, how we aren't getting the whole truth, how there are actions and machinations and backroom deals and let's just call it fuckery going on in other parts of the world. And in an instant, literally in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye, everything can change. And we can go from relative calm and peace to absolute chaos. 9/11 was what? Supposedly terrorists flew planes into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and into the ground in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They had a sanitized, boxed story that they presented within 24 hours. Right? The bullshit about passports landing on the ground and being read, and so we knew who the bad guys were. Right? Turns out that they were Saudis. Right? But they fabricated and had this story concocted and ready ahead of time. It was an event, and a lot of people were killed. It shocked the world. It changed the world. And it happened like that. Tomorrow, the next day, next week, the day before the election, the day after the election here, the midterms, we could have the Crown Prince's palace blow up. We could have President Erdogan assassinated. Attempts have already been made. Right? This is why we go, why was the Archduke Francis Ferdinand, Hans Francis, whatever the hell his name was, Ferdinand, in World War I, he was killed in Yugoslavia. And that started World War I. He's just one man. He was an insignificant member of the aristocracy, Archduke of some no-name country, right? Some backwater Eastern European. Yet the whole war was started? No. It was all of that pressure between the East and the West and the Ottoman Empire. That is the Arab world. And it was all that pressure was there. And what they were looking for and they needed was an excuse. So they used the excuse of one man, the Archduke, being murdered, to cause this conflagration, politically, economically, right? And boom, World War I. Right now we have a tremendous amount of pressure between China in the east, Russia to the north, Europe to the west, the U.S. out in the middle of the oceans, right? And then we've got all this pressure down in the southern part, right? All of the oil-producing, highly critical, highly important Persian Gulf area. We've got all this same pressure. We've got different political parties and affiliations. We've got world fascism. We've got disguised communism. We've got emerging markets. We've got dying empires. There's tons of political pressure. There's tons of economic pressure. Right now there is, even though they don't report it, a huge amount of imperialism, just like previous to World War I. China's in Africa. China is in Australia. China's in Central and South America. Right? Russia is trying to stabilize itself. The U.S. is reaching out, right? and going, well, we can't make money, we can't do a good job, let's just put tariffs on everything. Right? So we've got all of this going on. Right? China in the South China Sea thinking they own everything. You know, what's real, what isn't? What is fake? Absolutely fake. Just like the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam. It was a fake incident. It was fed to the press. The press dutifully reported it. The people were outraged, and we go to Vietnam War. All of those elements exist now. The press is controlled by the banking elite. The American press is controlled by the banking elite. The American press is controlled by the banking elite. You know, there's facts. We have an economic crisis we're about to deal with. We've got a political crisis we're dealing with. We've got an oil crisis in the Middle East. All of the components for shit hitting the fan, in other words, are available right now. And there is a political storm in a teacup over a reporter being killed. And we'll never know the truth. But what we may end up experiencing is the negative downstream consequences of these operations that occur in secret. Right? This James Bond type shit. It can get out of hand. Right? The Archduke in World War I or pre-World War I was killed by an organization, mafia organization called the Black Hand. Right? Who really was the one that killed the reporter? Was it the Crown Prince? Was it bin Salman's men? Was it someone else and they're being framed? Who witnessed what was going on? What was the real deal behind it? None of that really matters. I mean, frankly, thousands of people die of natural causes. Thousands of people die of unnatural causes. Thousands of people are murdered, put in jail, beaten to death, tortured all the time. Why do I care about this guy more than anyone else? The reason I care more about this one guy in this particular instance is because of the potential shit hitting the fan consequences. You need to be prepared. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, and a plan. Right? It's very serious. Right? I hope that we have some notice ahead of time. I don't want to wake up, right, to my phone ringing at 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning, someone screaming in my ear that a nuke just went off. I don't want to hear that. I don't want that call. You know, but it could happen. And it doesn't even have to be an American city. It can be a nuke in Rome. It could be a nuke in Paris, Barcelona, London. It doesn't matter where it goes off, right? That just means that shit is coming down, right? So, you know, how's that old saying go? Buyer beware. Be careful what it is that you're purchasing. For preppers, we're purchasing preps. Right? Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine. Means of self-defense. For everyone else on this planet, what are they purchasing? They're trying to purchase peace of mind. They're buying cars and houses to the extent they can and trying to ignore everything and just be entertained and not understand the dire straits this planet is in because of the stupidity, the greed, and the evil that is rampant. Sheesh! Happy Monday morning, huh? All right, I'm going to get my second cup of coffee, get my ass to work, and we'll see what happens this week. So until tomorrow, you guys be cool. Chance favors. The prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi, and Godspeed to everyone.